Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil services main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 2. Here goes the question. Analyze the reasons why the post of Deputy Prime Minister has not become institutionalized in India, unlike the office of the Vice President of India. So, as you would have observed, as it's a common observation actually, that the office of the Vice President of India is a permanent fixture actually. That means since the start of the Republic, since the inception of the Republic, there has been no time virtually when the office has not been there. That is, even if there has been, it has been vacant, that is, there have been no incumbent due mostly to untimely deaths, etc. But the office has been there all the time. In direct contrast, the office, or rather, the post of the Deputy Prime Minister has been, you could say, quite temporary. As we would see later, that in almost last 2 decades, there has been no Deputy Prime Minister in India. So this is the contrast. You are supposed to analyze the reasons why it is so. We are introducing our answer with talking about constitutional provisions for the office of the Vice President. That is, Article 63 of our Constitution creates the office of the Vice President of India. You can understand very well, as the office of the Vice President is created by the Constitution itself. It grants the office constitutional protection and sanctity. Further, Article 65 outlines the role of the Vice President when the President's office becomes vacant or the President is unable to perform his or her duties for various reasons. So we can extend this idea and argue that the Vice President stands as a standby. He appears as a standby for the President. When the President is not able to discharge his or her duties due to various reasons, it is the Vice President who for some time takes over the, you could say, duties, not the post, duties of the President. The office of the Vice President is the second highest office in the Republic of India. Actually, in the order of precedence, he is the second highest, you could say, entry. And since its inception in 1950, there have been 14 persons who have graced the office till the present time. In contrast, since Sri Lal Krishna Advani, who was Deputy Prime Minister during the term 2002 to 2004, no Deputy Prime Minister has been designated. So you can understand very well that the office of, that is the post of the Deputy Prime Minister has been considered dispensable. So much so that for the last 2 decades and more, there has been no Deputy Prime Minister designated in India. And you can understand very well that Sri Lal Krishna Advani was quite politically powerful. He was a designated Deputy Prime Minister during the term of Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. This stark contrast between the office of the Vice President and post of the Deputy PM speaks volumes about their position in the constitutional scheme of things. That is, what the Constitution has planned for these two positions actually, the office of the Vice President and the post of the Deputy Prime Minister. The contrast speaks volumes on about this. Again, we would like to add here that the Constitution does not even mention the post of the Deputy Prime Minister. It is simply silent on Deputy Prime Minister. Unlike the Vice President, who is a constitutional functionary, independent of the President. Please, we would like to emphasize this point, that the Vice President is not subordinated to the President, but rather he is an independent constitutional functionary. The Deputy PM is a mere appendage, a mere extension of the Prime Minister. That is, if a Deputy Prime Minister is appointed at all. So even if a deputy prime minister is appointed, he is mostly considered, you could say, an appendage and extension of the office of the prime minister. Why deputy prime minister is a mere appendage? There are various reasons, taking them one by one. First, the office of the deputy prime minister does not enjoy, it has no constitutional sanctity, unlike the office of the vice president. As we have seen that the article 63 itself creates the office of the vice president. That means the office of the vice president enjoys constitutional sanctity. That is quite unlike deputy prime minister, who is not even mentioned by the constitution. Deputy prime minister's role is not well delineated. As we have discussed in the passing, that the vice president's role is well delineated. That is, he has to appear as a standby of the president through article 64, when the president is not able to discharge his or her duties for various reasons. This is quite unlike the deputy prime minister, whose role is not delineated because he is not mentioned in the first place. It is the PM's prerogative, that is, it is the PM's, you could say, discretionary privilege to appoint a deputy prime minister or no. The PM might decide to appoint a deputy prime minister, or he might simply decide to dispense with the post of deputy prime minister. Now, it is very rare that we discuss, you could say, political dimensions, but here it is quite relevant to discuss the political dimensions. Elections are being fought on the face of the prime minister. You can understand very well, as the prime minister has become the prime vote puller. You can understand, as the commentators call it, a presidential style of election that has been a feature in India since the earliest days, but it has strengthened in the, you could say, present actually, with the strong face behind the prime minister. This means that it is the prime minister who is the prime vote puller for his party, and with this confidence he might not feel a need to appoint a deputy prime minister. Moreover, it has to do a lot with intra-power dynamics, that is, intra-party power dynamics. So that is, what are the power relations in the party that would decide whether a deputy prime minister is appointed or not. Generally, it is to, you could say, appease or pacify the prime rival of the prime minister. Elaborating on these points, we have seen that our constitution itself, that is Article 63, creates the office of the vice president, that makes the office non-abolishable. In contrast, the deputy prime minister is not even mentioned in the constitution, making the post dispensable. Apart from vice president's role as temporary standby for president under Article 65, please recall that the vice president is the ex officio chairperson of the Council of States, Rajya Sabha, under Article 64. Please highlight these two articles, Article 65, 64, 63 as well. Please highlight these articles. That under Article 64, the vice president is the ex officio chairperson of the Council of States. This makes vice president an inalienable part of the parliamentary system. You can understand it very well, because the vice president heads the, you could say, senior chamber of the parliament. He is an inalienable part of the parliamentary system. Please also appreciate that presiding over Rajya Sabha, vice president represents federal spirit. You can recall that the Rajya Sabha is elected, the members of the Rajya Sabha are elected actually through the votes of the MLAs, that is the members of the legislative assemblies. That makes the Rajya Sabha in a spirit a federal chamber, because it is the states which decide what would be the composition of the Rajya Sabha. And as the vice president presides over the Rajya Sabha, he truly represents the federal spirit in India, as does the president, as we would discuss in some, you could say, some other occasions. Unlike the role for vice president, the deputy PM's role is not demarcated, because in the first place he is not even mentioned by the constitution. It is the Council of Ministers who has the final say. It is the Council of Ministers which or who has the final say in designating a minister, the deputy prime minister. Actually, it is the prime minister who is heading the council of ministers, who has the final say whether he would like to appoint a deputy prime minister or not. The council of ministers headed by prime minister often chooses not to designate a deputy prime minister. That is quite unlike the office of the vice president, where we have no choice but to appoint a vice president. Moreover, when the prime minister enjoys popularity among the masses, it is his or her face that fetches votes. Strong PMs like Indira ji, Modi ji, etc. have no particular need to appoint a deputy. There is no need to name names in your actual paper, UPSC paper. But here, for like the benefit of our discussion, we have mentioned their names. In practice, decision to designate a deputy prime minister has been a result actually of intra-party political dynamics in the ruling party. Generally, the deputy PM has been a person with substantial political capital and a potential rival to the prime minister incumbent. Designating a deputy PM is a way to acknowledge the political weight of major rival in PM's own party. You can actually appreciate it, or you can actually argue rather that the deputy prime ministers have been, you could say, quite political heavyweights, starting from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, coming to Sri Morarji Bhai Desai, or for that matter Sri Lal Krishna Advani. All of them had their own political basis, and they were actually quite some political weight they carried, and it was perhaps to, you could say, a nod to their, you could say, importance in the party that they were designated deputy prime minister. However, it can also be argued it is mostly to appease a political rival. It is mostly to pacify their political ambitions that that someone politician is designated a deputy prime minister. Anyway, this is going into political domain, and we would simply bail out from here. Anyway, the thing is, the conclusion we are coming to is that however, deputy prime minister is a potential avenue. It's a very, very important point. Please ponder over it. The deputy prime minister is a potential avenue to give expression to political aspirations in a diverse country, and it is the ruling dispensation's democratic prerogative to do so. The thing is, suppose the present incumbent prime minister were to appoint a deputy prime minister from the southern part of India. For that matter, he were to appoint a deputy prime minister who came from the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes background. So you can understand very, very well, he would actually it would actually send this message. It would be a very good signaling to South India, for that matter, the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes, that he actually appreciates their political aspirations. This is the argument we are making in the conclusion. However, we would like to add it that it is indeed the prerogative of the prime minister and his council of ministers and his party to appoint a deputy prime minister or not. This was all on the contrast between the office of the vice president and the post of the deputy prime minister. Why the former is a permanent fixture in India's constitutional scheme of things, while the other is considered more dispensable. We have seen into the reasons why it is so, and with this we call it a day. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.